Hey guys, Troll 9002. It is 2:36 a.m. on 11/16/2020. It's a little chilly here. We're in the middle 50s right now. And I think we're expected to go down to 46 like after tonight, like the next four nights. But thankfully we'll be back into the 50s by the weekend. So it is the week before Thanksgiving. Um, I'm not. Sorry I haven't been posting, but with work being all the changes and stuff, and everybody biting their heads off and running with chickens like their heads cut off, it's just been crazy. I get hours to stay. I don't get hours to stay. Weeks are weird. Half the time I don't even know what day it is. So I've got my flannel shirt on, but y'all know how much I don't like doing Christmas in November, because to me Christmas is December. I know there's a million of you that would do it year round if you could. Um, it's just not me. But tonight's story, I'm going to break the rules a little bit. It's called Christmas Blessing. As children, we are never told how elves got to have that very special, awesome job to work with Santa Claus, the coolest dude ever this time of year. In this day and age, children really don't believe in anything but electronics. Do you know how elves are born? It's an interesting story. As it turns out, Jesus and Santa worked together. As you all know, young children go to heaven, whether they are unborn or tragically die. I believe all children go to heaven. Sometimes, when the children get a little restless or hyper in heaven, Jesus sends them over to the North Pole to help Santa out in the workshops. That is how elves are made. Elves are children who have passed on but still have so much love and good to give. And so, they put the love and good into toys and gadgets that good children wait for all year. They just don't realize that is what they're actually waiting for. That magical feeling that they get every year. That's not the sugar rush in presents. That's more advanced than toys and gadgets. And it's the love and goodness coming from the children that made those toys. Santa would be confused on how to make all the new gadgets and toys. After all, he used his hand to make wooden toys, and such that had almost become irrelevant everywhere except for the Neverlands. Kudos to people who understand that. Those children loved wooden toys, mostly because they found it fascinating that Santa, like them, still made things out of wood. The awesome thing about the elves is even though they never grew up, they stayed child size. Their minds would grow and expand. When Santa would fly on Christmas Eve, he would drop them in different cities and colleges along the way, so they could read, learn, and figure out how to make the newest gadgets. And the elves, because they had no worries or cares or stress, they would have the most amazing photographic memories. And this is how we get our gadgets, when we are so very good all year round. Even as adults, you still wonder, at least I do. But I will always be a kid at heart. It's what gets me through everything. One Christmas Eve night, Santa dropped off his elves like usual, to the colleges and to the libraries, and to Microsoft headquarters and Apple headquarters, and everywhere else that had top secret plans for their newest gadget. That is how kids got what they wanted when their parents weren't able to get it for them. I know there were several years in the early 90s we got things that I knew in my heart my parents couldn't afford. And I knew it deep down that I wouldn't get it, but they said to put it on the list anyway, and Santa would come through. If I was good enough, and sure enough, he always did. Come on now. You know the presents you got. You were like, what? And no. You know the ones. Anyway, so one night, an elf got left behind in the mean, cruel world that we know now. Stuck in an apple building, and you know it's an apple building because it has no windows in it. I know. I'm sorry. I had to go there. But, tis. Anyways, normally they would go out in pairs, and they would only stay long enough for Santa to drop the gifts off at nearby houses and swing back and get them. Anna likes to be thorough in how she remembers things ever since the pear disaster. A plan one year many moons ago that was hatched that instead of calling their electronic devices pears instead of apples, so the children would know their parents hadn't just run out and bought it. That the elf in charge of collecting the files to do that missed about 4 pages of directions, and needless to say the pear idea, though it was amazing, and would have given kids great proof that Santa really did exist, it all came crashing down when they couldn't figure out how to finish them. And so they had to go back to the usual way of making apples, by tree. I'm on a roll, I know. And deep down, Anna knew that it was wrong to steal someone else's idea and try to make them your own, whether you meant to or not. So ever since then, Anna concluded, if she was going to be in charge of the electronics unit at the North Pole, then it needed to be the right one. They needed to have the right plans, and they needed to know every detail before they even started. Now, before you think my story is about a crazy, crazy world, and how things like technological theft and all that jazz is, it's not. But the CEOs of companies would often leave out the files for the elves to read, much like people leave out milk and cookies for Santa. The file cabinets were tall, and not meaning the CEO of Apple left the files on top of them, thinking the elves would have the tools they could use to reach or whatever. They only think in technology, not practically sometimes. But Anna climbed her way up to the top of the file cabinet and was memorizing the file to take back to the pole. Her partner was into the other files on the other gadgets, and just as Anna was finishing, Santa sent the signal he was almost there and it was time to head up to be snatched up into the sleigh. So Simon, Anna's buddy elf, freaked out in excitement and bumped into the file cabinet, knocking Anna off into the drawers that weren't open before, but suddenly were now. And when Anna fell into the drawer, Simon ran over and slammed it shut. It was at that point that instead of Simon and Anna going to the roof for the pickup, Simon took the CEO of the company to the roof instead, to see Santa. No one knew why Simon would do such a thing, but as Anna tried to get out of the cabinet drawer, she was freaking out, and as Santa flew by, he saw the CEO with his camera waving in excitement. Santa, thinking it was both the elves that had failed him in keeping his secret, just flew on. After all, he couldn't risk the other elves and losing time in delivering the gifts all around the world, right? Anna, trying to fight her way out of the file cabinet, felt the magic of Christmas start to drain from her body as Santa got further and further away. The more angry she got, not just at Simon, but at the whole world, which started to drain all the goodness out of her, and the love she once had was slowly disappearing, and all the goodness and love was being replaced by hate and anger. And so Anna did the only thing she could think to do. She got real quiet and started to pray. And when she finished praying, as soon as she said amen, she fell into a deep sleep. Simon, who was adopted by the creepy CEO, was living the life. And the night Anna fell asleep, she slipped into a coma. It was her body's natural defense to stop the hate and the anger from rushing in. When Santa got home from his long trip around the world, Mrs. Claus did a head count of all the elves that had flown that night. Each year they all took turns, and that worked just like being good. The more you got done, and if you did your best, and the best production that determined who got to fly. And no one flew every year because elves know not to be selfish and let someone else go instead of them. Santa had just sat down in front of the fire, propped his feet up, when Mrs. Claus came running in screaming, "We're missing 2 elves! What happened? We're missing 2 elves! Where are they? Santa, get off your butt and tell me where you left those 2 elves!" Santa sighed and said, "They were taken by the world from us." She said, "They? What do you mean, they?" He told Angie that when he came to do the pickup, that Simon and a CEO were on top of the building waiting for them, and he assumed Anna was in on it and just flew off. This is what happens when elves want to stay outside of the North Pole. And for the next hour and a half, Mrs. Claus lectured her husband about how you should never assume and what about Anna. And she did. She lectured him, and he realized his mistake. And then he couldn't take any more yammer from his wife. He turned around and said, "How do you know she didn't turn on me too?" Angie said, "Just look into the glacier. If you watch the replay, you will see she was pushed into a drawer and locked up. And you just left her there because you assumed. How could you?" A few days later, Anna was finally taken out of the drawer of the file cabinet. Simon confirmed she was still alive, just in a coma. The CEO decided he was going to put Anna in a panic room until she awoke from the coma. Simon never had not 1 ounce of remorse. He sold out the whole operation of the North Pole. The one good thing is Simon had not been around long enough to know how to get back to the pole. But he knew Anna knew how to. There were a few rough days, almost New Year's Eve now, and Anna finally woke up from her coma. Not knowing where, when, or what was going on, the only thing she knew was that she was not at the pole. She had missed her ride. And in her room again with no windows, she just kept her eyes closed tight and talked to Jesus. Elves always had a straight connection to email with Jesus. The good thing is you do too. All you have to do is talk. I'm not saying that if you pray for it, you'll get it. I'm saying if it's God's will, then it will be done. It was through this time of meditation and prayer that Anna got her head back on straight, and after being affected by the portrayal of Simon and what seemed like Santa, because she had been left behind, after being sad for what seemed like forever, Anna finally hatched a plan to get back to the North Pole. But she had to be careful because she couldn't have Simon or the CEO follow her back. First, she had to get out of the panic room. No one can say for sure how that happened. It is said that an associate found out about Anna and hatched a plan to free her. And it worked. They used one of the animated characters you find at a store, the ones that snore and pretend to sleep in the bed. It worked perfectly. Lauren was able to take Anna out of the panic room without a problem, and they entered into the scary part of the world that Anna had never seen, the part with actual people. Anna was terrified, but Lauren was tough, so she helped Anna not to be scared and to be tough, and eventually she would get Anna back to the North Pole. Lauren had been alone for her whole life, and even though she had heard every cliche in the book about it and why she was alone and what it meant and this, that, and the other thing, it always ended the same. She was alone. You can reach out to people all you want, but if they don't reach back to you, you fall. What Lauren learned in her whole existence is people will always let you down to save themselves. And Anna, never having felt that, somehow understood. Anna and Lauren bonded very well, and so when the bell of the new year came along, Lauren worried that maybe Anna wouldn't be able to get back to the pole. But Anna knew it would be okay because Jesus said so. In a little bit of time that Lauren and Anna spent together, Anna was able to bring Lauren to accept Jesus into her heart as her Lord and Savior. It was that same night that Laura was able to go with Anna back to the pole. Santa, surprised that the elf was able to enter into the pole, opened his arms and welcomed Lauren. For a bit, though Laura had grown up believing in Santa, when she was introduced to the real reason for the season, Laura stayed very confused and no longer felt the same about the holiday. She didn't know if it was a season of magic or a season of religion. Lauren couldn't grasp that it would be both. Anna, joyous to be home at the pole and greeted by the other elves, told them stories and the terrors of the real world, not to frighten them, but to make them aware. A few months later, Lauren was sent back to the real world, per se, and Anna got back to work in the electronics department of the workshop, where that year she herself figured out a way to update the electronic device that was going to be popular. And by way in figuring out quick what was going to happen and be popular, Anna was able to start production early. And so that year, when all the kids wanted that very exceptionally good electronic device, Anna's department was already done making it. She was smart like that. Lauren was sent home with a very special thank you from Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and a mysterious envelope with instructions not to open until Christmas Eve the following year. Lauren, being the way she was, still struggling with mixing the seriousness of the reason for this season, and the way she was brought up, she still decorated crazy with lights and all that, bought presents for those who deserved, and who she felt didn't deserve, and put thought into every single cupcake she gave out that year, like she did every year. Finally, on December 24th, after coming home from the Christmas Eve candlelight service, she prepped her usual food for the next day to spend alone, and she got a shower and she went to bed pretty early, with no expectation of anything that night. She closed her eyes and she prayed. After all, it had been 10 months since Lauren had learned from Anna how to pray, and ever since learning, she did it every night. And every night without fail, Lauren would pray. As Lauren slept, she suddenly awoke out of nowhere for no reason that she could figure out, but it was midnight on December 25th. She could open the envelope, that very special envelope she had also received 10 months ago. And that night she opened it and read it. And that night God and Santa brought her a gift. One that she didn't even know she needed, but one that showed her the purpose of her lonely life and why she never had anyone. Santa delivered in his sleigh Anna back to Lauren. It turns out, for a long time before the Great Escape, Lauren was praying for a companion in her life, and it was finally God's time to provide for Lauren, and so Anna was to be her good and faithful companion. And just like the mean evil CEO adopted Simon, who ended up on the streets a beggar once no one needed him anymore, Lauren adopted Anna, and they were so happy together like best friends, but not. You see, being raised in the pole, Anna had already been given manners and all the things that children are brought up with. So Lauren didn't have to discipline Anna ever, and they bonded together. They stayed together for the rest of their lives, and when Lauren would lose the magic in the tragic world, Anna would remind her the simplicities and the silver lining to many things. And when Anna would get wrapped up in the magic, Lauren would remind her the real reason for the season. We all see the memes every year about how people could be fighting battles that other people know nothing about, and where you might look at Lauren's struggle to balance family traditions with new traditions with a bigger, deeper meaning. I am a sinner saved by grace, and I know the reason for the season now, but I also remember the magic of the season, as I was raised with Santa. So for me, to balance that, some days seems harder than others, but in the end, I have to side with what I know. Jesus is the reason for the season, and I think in this world that we have in front of us right now, now more than ever, we need to turn to Him. I can quote some scripture and throw some other things at you to end out this story, but that's just not my style. I've not grown out of the stage of feeling like when I bombard people with Bible quotes and verses. I think it just shuts them down, and for some reason automatically makes them feel like I am trying to make myself appear better to them. That is never my intention, and my intention is not to crush the traditions that you have been raised with, but instead, I ask your thoughts on the whole situation. How do you do Christmas? How do you balance the religious aspect and the magic aspect? Were you born and raised that Jesus was the reason for the season? Or were you born and raised that it was all about presents and Santa and family and food? And let me know in the comments. This is Troll 9002, the very long story that I will not apologize for. When we get to December, if we ever get to December, I hope to maybe have another story, but I can't promise because I'm so very busy with work and everything else. Pray you guys have a great week. This is the Good Troll signing off. Have a great week, day, month, whatever. Just be great in everything you do. Take care.